Welcome to another fantastic episode of Snap Judgment Snap Takes. Today, brought to you by Gunny T, filling in for our boy Glazer, who's on an awesome vacation in Colombia. He's actually traveling back home today. You'll have me today. Tomorrow will be Doc D before he brings it back to you live on Wednesday. He's taking this much needed vacation right before the school season kicks off. I wish him best of luck in the 2024 school season, but I'm ready to bring you three awesome decks. Starting off with our boy Ika. We've had him on here before, and we love having his crazy concoctions on here. Ika's Hood Rats has been so much fun to play, and I'm excited to bring you this deck. So starting off, we have the Hood, then Mysterio, Ravonna Renslayer, Kate Bishop Hawkeye, Cassandra Nova, Sage, Nocturne, Viper, Wong, White Tiger, the super surprising card Cersei, and then lastly, Mockingbird. Let's get down into the replacements before we kick off the turn-by-turn deck. All right, so our replacements here, if you do not have Hawkeye, which I really hope that you should be buying the season pass if you're going to be taking this game a little bit seriously. But if you don't, you can really replace it with any good 2-drop. I would highly suggest Jeff if you have it, or White Widow. Both of those cards work really well in conjunction with this deck. Cassandra Nova and Nocturne can really be any good 3-drop. It could be Copycat, Red Guardian. It could be Mobius and Mobius, kind of whatever you're feeling, whatever the flavor of the day is and what the meta needs. But specifically, Cassandra Nova, you're going to see in several of the decks today is for the arishem matchups. It's a one-lane game winner, possibly in one card. So it's really good right now, but you don't necessarily need to have it. And then the rest of the cards in this deck are needed. So for our turn-by-turn breakdown, we'll start off with Ika bringing in a surprising 60% win rate in Top Infinite with this deck. And that win rate is actually a little bit low, but one thing this deck does is it can steal cubes with surprising plays from a card like Cersei. So on turn 1, we're going to want to do the Hood or skip. The Hood's our only 1-drop, so that's what we want to play there. If not, we just go ahead and move on to our next turn, which the best card to put down is going to be Ravonna Renslayer, because we have so many low-costed and zero-costed cards in this deck that getting it out early is super beneficial to it. But we can also do, it's going to be a little bit better than Mysterio or Kate Bishop, and then you could also put the Hood down here, or put the Demon down if you already have played the Hood on turn 1. Turn 3, if we are not playing against arishem, you could Cassandra Nova. Although you may consider playing Cassandra Nova early against the arishem just to go ahead and give them a Shang target, because they're probably going to want to use their Shang anyways. Go ahead and just pop that thing out there and make them target it. You can also get your Nocturne down or do one of your previous turn plays. On turn 4, we're either going to set up with our Wong, which is one of the great things this deck can do, or we can play a reduced cost White Tiger, or again, any of your previous turns. But if you're really not popping off by this point with some of these cards, then you're probably not doing too well. Moving on to turn 5, we can use our White Tiger on top of our Wong lane to push out 2 8-power Tigers, which is pretty awesome. Or we can use our Cersei if we put like our White Tiger down on the previous turn, and using that Cersei on a lane that has the Hood down that's at -3 and the White Tiger, making it into a 6-drop. All these things, or a Mysterio clone, making the 0-cost Mysterio clone into a good 3-drop. All these things are just going to add to your cube equity and really help push this deck over the top. And then turn 6 is really your pop-off surprising turn. We do have cards like Sage in here on top of a Wong that will add so much power, it gets kind of ridiculous. You can do really any kind of combination of things. You can do your Cersei on top of your Wong lane, and then proc those things twice. I've done that before, taking a Wong to make it a 6-drop, which is really can be really crazy. I've also had it become a destroyer on me, but that happens, and you just got to take it. With the Cersei chances, things will happen, but you are going to get good cubes if those things happen in your favor. Also getting a Mockingbird down really cheap with a Sage, all surprising amounts of power. The main thing is you're just going to have to judge, what the board state has told you that you need to do by this point. I really have enjoyed this deck. This deck is also really good into clog decks, especially if you can maintain at least one position open on turn 5 or 6, where you take all that clog junk that they've given you and use your Cersei on top of it to change those things. Like changing a Goblin into a good 4-drop is a ridiculous thing to do. It can definitely steal games away. I also don't have Viper in this at all. You're going to end up playing Viper whenever it's convenient to push over either a 0-costed Mysterio, or especially using it on top of that Hood to send 3 or -3 power over to your opponent. Really, really fun deck. I have enjoyed playing it a lot, and Ika's always bringing that fire with surprising cards and surprising decks. So I really love it. Thanks, Ika, so much for letting me showcase this deck today. All right, we'll take one last look at this deck. Again, the real power that I see coming from this deck is Cersei. So make sure you're snapping on those good Cersei plays, and then just kind of using the rest of the deck to kind of follow suit. Really, I don't think I've seen too many opponents just predict that I'm going to change that white tiger into a 6-drop. So that really can steal cubes away from your opponent. Please, please, please subscribe if you have not already. Give a like, a little thumbs up to this video, and then throw some comments down. It really helps the algorithms and helps YouTube promote our content even more. So if you are enjoying what you're seeing here, a simple thumbs up button click, and then just writing a comment down, asking a question, just saying something about the deck. It really goes a long way for us, and we really, really appreciate it. There are 15, count them, 15 alliances that we have, official Snap Judgments League alliances. And we will create more and more as we get more people wanting alliances. And something new that we just started this past week is on our Discord. We are doing alliance versus alliance team battles, which is a really cool, fun thing that you can participate in. It's open to everybody. We do give a priority to our Patreon. So if you happen to be a Patreon, you get a priority slot into one of our alliances. But we have plenty of room, and we'll create more alliances as needed for people who aren't even patrons. We just love bringing our community together. And honestly, when we did the alliance versus alliance, it was Gunny T's team versus Models team. Unfortunately, Models team won. But they did a fantastic job. It was a great game. We hosted it on our Discord, and we had the players playing live, and the team members could all watch the game. They could coach them. They could cheer them on. It was just a really fun event to see, like, 5 or 6 players from each alliance just be in there and communicating in a way that we really don't see very often in this game. So please join us. We have so much fun over there, and I hope to see you there. Next deck has been another really fun deck that I found. It was Phazor's Total Lunar Eclipse. And this deck is bringing that fire with Black Knight, which was a great card a few seasons ago, but bringing it back here in a completely new way with some updated cards. So we got the Black Knight, Blade, Jeff, Cassandra Nova, Moon Knight, Lady Sif, Ghost Rider, Claw, Black Bolt, Stature, Red Hulk, and the Infinite. Let's go ahead and move down to our replacements. So for Jeff, if you don't happen to have it, it could really be any good utility 2-drop, be it a White Widow, be it a Shadow King, although you'll have to watch out for not reducing your blade that you create with the Black Knight down to 0. But the Shadow King is a very good card. So really just any good 2-drop that you want to put there. Jeff specifically is in this deck for those hard to reach locations, giving you a way to win things that you might not have been able to win otherwise. Cassandra Nova is in this deck a lot like Ika's deck because it's just such a free roll card against arishem. But if you are not seeing a lot of arishem or you don't have Cassandra Nova, any good 3-drop could be here. Any of the ones I really mentioned before, any of the standard 3-drops that are just Cosmo or something. But it could also be Copycat. It could be Red Guardian. It could be Nocturne. Really anything that you want to put there. It's definitely a flex spot. And then lastly, Red Hulk can be a Magneto because Magneto can just sometimes win games on its own by clogging up lanes or just doing funky stuff that your opponents are not expecting. Now let's go down to our turn-by-turn breakdown. A very, very impressive 67% win rate in the top infinite by Ninja Panda. So Phazor's the one that made this, but Ninja Panda has done a lot of testing for them and has been killing it with this deck. So keep it up. Thank you very much, Ninja Panda, and thank you, Phazor, for allowing me to showcase this video today. So on turn 1, we're going to do the Black Knight. I have noticed there's a real lack of Killmonger in where I'm at in the meta, and really on the top of the meta as well. If you are seeing a lot of Killmonger, you may want to consider holding back the Black Knight because you don't want to have that thing destroyed, obviously. But the Black Knight's really, it's fairly safe right now to get down. Surfer decks are still playing Killmonger, so if you happen to see, I mean, you obviously wouldn't know, but there's a threat there. Surfer's just not the most popular currently in the meta. And then I say Blade, it says dependent on turn 1 and 2, really, and it's dependent about, the entire, on all the turns here. Because you're going to play that Blade when you need to play the Blade, when you've got a good target, either be it a big Red Hulk or be it an Infinite. You want to get those out of your hands, so that way you can bring them back later. Specifically, though, I have noticed that holding Black Knight and Blade together, especially you don't have one of those big cards in your hand, can be a decent thing to do. It's only 2 energy. You can kind of squeeze those into different turns, but dropping those both in the same turn, the Black Knight and then the Blade to drop, an Infinite or something, is very surprising for a lot of opponents. And you just snap into that. They don't know what's going on. They don't know why you're snapping. And then next thing you know, you've got a 4-cost, 20 power card that can't be destroyed, that is, barking down their neck. On turn 3, you want to do a Cassandra Nova. If you're not playing against Arishem or Loki, you want to hold Cassandra Nova back if you feel like you're playing against one of those 2 cards, because you want to use your Cassandra Nova a little bit later against Arishem and after your opponent has used Loki, because it's going to add more cards to their deck. But getting it out now to get your 6 energy is a completely fine thing to do. Also, this is a great turn to use Moon Knight because it's going to discard a card out of your opponent's hand, reducing the cost of your stature, and then hopefully discarding one of your big giant cards out of your hand. But do not use this card if you have Ghost Rider in your hand, because it can discard that, and Ghost Rider is absolutely one of your win conditions. So on turn 4, if we have a big Black Knight Blade, it's a great time to play your Black Knight Blade because it's so difficult to deal with. Obviously, Shadow King can deal with it. It's a threat that you have to deal with, but it's not something that we really need to worry about too much. So it's only 1 card, and stuff happens. It at least cannot be Shang-Chi'd, which is a much more popular card. You can also use your Ghost Rider on this turn if you don't have anything better to do. Now, that will give your opponent a solid Shang-Chi target, but that is sometimes okay in this deck, especially if you are able to, do some other things. Maybe if you have, discarded the Infinite and you want to get your Ghost Rider out there and pull your Infinite back, but you have a backup Red Hulk in your hand, so you are going to put it in 2 lanes anyways, so it doesn't really matter. They're going to have to choose a lane that they're going to want to Shang-Chi. Now, in turn 5, this is going to be really dependent on the game state and what you have done up to this point. But Black Bolt is a great card to drop here because it's obviously going to discard something from your opponent. Getting your stature to cost 1 and a 1/7, I've heard, is pretty darn good. You can also do your Ghost Rider, you can do the Black Knight Blade, or you can claw into an unreachable lane, especially if you've been clogged up or there's just somewhere that you cannot play. On turn 6, this is when you'd want a Cassandra Nova plus stature if you're playing against Arishem, just throwing so much power down. You can also do a Ghost Rider plus stature. This deck can play out so much power on the final turn. It's kind of crazy. And just know that you've put out a 13 power Black Knight Blade. You've also discarded your Red Hulk into that. So playing, you have this 13 power sitting in 1 lane, and you're going to throw your Ghost Rider down plus that, plus bringing back the Red Hulk. That's another 16 power in a different lane. You have 7 power to put elsewhere. It's just really, really explosive on the final turn. Now, one thing I will say about this deck whenever I was playing it is very much like a combo deck, and there are some times where the deck just doesn't draw right. And that is okay. You're going to take your retreats on those games, but then make it back up whenever you surprise them with ridiculous amounts of power. I've just found that Black Knight's been out of the meta for so long that I think people forget that Ghost Rider even exists. So they're really surprised whenever I Ghost Rider and pull back an Infinite. Plus, I played, a 20 power Black Blade before that. I don't even know why they stay in some of these games, but it has been so much fun to play, and it's not surprising that it's been taken to a 67% win rate. Take one more look at the deck here. I'm really, really enjoying this deck. The mixture of Black Bolt and stature together. Moon Knight is so cool in this deck because it only has 4 targets, 2 of them being the targets that you want to get rid of. Sometimes you'll have that Ghost Rider in hand, but really having such minimal amount of targets, and it can really mess up your opponent's turn 6 plays. If they have something like an Goliath they want to use, sometimes you'll discard that, or you'll just discard, on turn 3, you'll discard the play they wanted to make on turn 4. It's been really, really disruptive, and I've had players just concede right after I've Moon Knighted. And then the Claw, really spicy inclusion. I know he said that you could play it on turn 5, but sometimes a turn 6 Claw in stature is just enough to do it because they're not expecting you to put 8 power into a lane that was closed off to you before. So check this deck out. I highly recommend it. It is so darn cool. I'm going to give you guys a quick league update here. So Season 3 Championship is going to be streamed next weekend by It's Guest Gaming. It is going to be so fantastic. We have great players lined up for you. We're going to see some top-level play for sure, and it's going to be such a great time. Live streamed, to be determined right now what time and date exactly, but I know it will be next weekend. And that brings us to Season 4 kicking off September 9th. We have another $500 prize pool lined up for season 4. We will begin registration for that coming up this week. I'm going to create it, I know, just waiting on a few graphics here, and we'll have that all lined up, and we'll start bringing you all in to register for season 4. I really hope to see you there. Remember, it is a $1. It's open. It's a Patreon perk for anybody who's a $1 Patreon or more, and you can be entered. Have the ability to, 1, play awesome games against some of the top players in the world, and 2, have access to a tournament that pays $500 out, which is pretty amazing for your $1 fee. Also, one of the coolest things that I think, this wasn't around whenever I did the last Snap Takes video, but now we have this stream team, and this is something I always, whenever I was watching these videos, I always wanted to see gameplay of some of these cool decks that Aaron was talking about. So having the stream team put together has been amazing. And specifically tonight, if you watch Gregor's stream, he will be playing one of the cool decks that I'm talking about today. I'm pretty sure I know which one it is. I'm not going to spoil it for him though. But it is going to be so cool watching Gregor post up these videos after he plays them, but also streaming it. So make sure you tune in every day that we post decks. There's going to be an awesome streamer that is going to be streaming those decks. And I'm so glad that Glazer put together this initiative. And thank you so much to these streamers for participating in it. The last deck I have for you is such a cool deck. This is probably my favorite deck from today. But it's high elationary. I'm going to go with elationary. All right. So we got the Hood, Hazmat, White Widow, Mysterio, Cassandra Nova, Debris, Viper, High Evolutionary. You read that right. High Evolutionary for 1 card in the deck. Annihilus, Ajax, that 1 card we spoke of, which is Abomination, and lastly, Mockingbird. Let's break down the replacements before we go into the turn by turn. All right, White Widow has been tested on Kate Bishop. The testers and the players are kind of back and forth on it. They don't know what's better right now. We're leaning more towards White Widow, but really it could be either or really any, I guess, 2 costs you want to put there, but these are definitely the best ones to put in. Cassandra Nova is for arishem, but it can really be any good 2 or 3 drop. Any of the ones we spoke about before, be it Nocturne, Copycat, Red Guardian, Mobius and Mobius, because kind of whatever you are seeing around, you can put in Cassandra for it, especially if you're not seeing arishem, but right now arishem is kind of running rampant, and the rest of the deck is required. But let's go into our turn-by-turn breakdown. So Ruben made this deck with the help of Jimmy Dickens. He posted it on X, which is where I found it, but Jimmy Dickens climbed to rank 20 with it, and he climbed about 350 SP in just like a day and a half, which is kind of insane. I don't know if you follow Top of the Meta and whatnot. That is a huge amount. Husky Puppies has been testing it as well, and it's just like it's kind of running rampant. You can find all these guys on like Yo Woody's Discord or just around any of the top Discords if you want to talk to them. They're super excited about the deck. I'm super excited about the deck. This is a cool one. So let's go to our turn by turn. Starting turn 1, we will always Hood if possible. Turn 2, we're going to White Widow or Kate, whichever one you have in the deck, which is better than Mysterio. You always want to use Debris on turn 3. But if you don't have the Debris in hand, you can use a Viper like on a Mysterio clone or on the Hood, especially if you don't have a Nihilus in hand, just to hedge your bets and get rid of that -3 power on your side. And then you can also Demon plus Mysterio if you want to get a Mockingbird down the following turn. Now, turn 4 is a very dynamic turn, and it's such a weird turn. So I've been playing around with some Annihilus, or sorry, not Annihilus, but Hazmat and Ajax decks. And you generally want to hold that stuff to the end. But in this deck in particular, on turn 4, this is the best time to use your Hazmat, especially if you have a Nihilus in hand. Imagine this. You have a board full of junk. You have Mysterio tokens out there. You have your rocks and whatnot. You Hazmat plus Mysterio on this turn, which will allow you to make all those 0 costed into -1 cost, plus all your rocks and stuff. Now, specifically, you want to try to line up your 4 power Mysterio onto a lane to hopefully not give it to them. But there are times where it just happens. It's okay. It's only 3 power. But you're lining up for your next turn. This turn is also, if you don't have a Nihilus in hand, you can get your Mockingbird down now with a Hazmat, which will then bring Mockingbird down below a Shang-Chi range, which is pretty awesome. But really what we're lining up for is a turn 5 Annihilus, where we're just going to push over all that junk that we've created. It's all minus anything, especially if you're playing and you're getting clogged up a little bit yourself, no big deal. You just Annihilus all that junk away. It disappears. It's like it never existed for you. So we pull that down. hopefully lock out the opponent. Make sure you snap before this, because if you've locked out your opponent at this point, you're not getting any more cubes. They're definitely running away if you snap them. Snap into this play, and then send them over all that junk. Now, if they think they can pull off the game after you've done this, we're going to move into our turn 6 stat dump, excuse me. So we can, in this deck, because we've used a hazmat and afflicted so many things with negative power, we can have a huge Ajax with a demon and a free abomination, which is insane amounts of power just spread across the board, and absolutely just wrecking your opponent for huge cube gains. I will say, with playing this deck and talking to the creators and the testers here, that this deck is very, very, very reliant on hazmat. So if you haven't drawn hazmat, you can't play hazmat, then you're not really looking very good unless you've gotten like a weird game that just allows you to win. Hazmat is very crucial to this deck, and you might just have to retreat games that you're not really drawing your hazmat. Anyways, cool deck. Let's take one more look at it. Just a cool way to use these cards. I've never thought about using High Evolutionary for one card ever, but it's such a cool way to do it. And really, now that High Evolutionary is a 4/6, it's at least decent power. It doesn't feel as bad as when it was a 4/4, but there are some strong cards in this deck, and I highly suggest you trying it out before everybody catches up, because I think this might be a next meta tyrant for sure. All right. Gonna finish it out here. You can find us over on patreon.com/snapjudgments. That's how you can get yourself the availability to enter all the awesome tournaments that I'm running over on the Snap Judgments League Discord. And we would love to see you there, which brings us to our special patrons, which are $10 patrons. I'm not going to read this list. I haven't read this list for a while. Glazer does it every time. He does a ridiculous job at it. There's so many of them now. Here's what I will say, though. Our $1 patrons are awesome. Our $5 patrons are awesome. Those are the ones that allow us to run our tournaments without having to pay out of our pockets. But our $10 patrons here, these are the ones that allow us to do extra things. You know, to donate a little bit of extra money over to the SnapCon that happened last week. You know, support smaller tournaments, do some cool things within the community. It allows Glazer to give some support to his staff. But the $10 patrons are the ones that make that happen, and I so much appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much for being a $10 patron, and thank you all for watching today's Snap Takes with Gunny T. Glazer, you better cut back and take over this channel, because we're starting to run rampant with it here. We cannot wait to see you on Wednesday, and everybody else, keep on snapping.